Hey everyone, this is Rene from Tippy.com. Welcome to our weekly show focused on everything iPhone, from news and how-tos to app and accessory reviews. This is iPhone Live.
iPhone Live is brought to you by the Tippy iPhone Accessory Store, your one-stop shop for cases, cables, chargers, and much, much more. Check out store.tippy.com. See you there.
It's Wednesday, November 16th, and joining me tonight is the co-host of Nickelfish and the... It's Wednesday, November 16th, and joining me tonight is the co-host of Iterate and the CIO of Nickelfish, Mr. Seth Clifford. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing well, Rene. How are you?
Very well, thank you. You are looking slightly less pinked and perturbed than you did last week.
Oh, that's good. I've altered my lighting ever so slightly to make everyone a lot happier, so I hope it works.
Really, Seth, to make them happier, not to make you
make
happier?
everyone happier.
Does making them happier make you bitterer?
Well, very few things make me less bitter, so yeah.
Also joining us tonight is the host of iPad Live, Zen and Tech, and Girls Gone Gadgets. Georgia, how are you?
Thank you. I'm doing really well, though slightly tired, and I wanted to say to Seth, I like you in your magenta hues.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I want to project a rosy glow for you so that you feel comfortable.
I want to thank Georgia for taking time out on her 19 other shows to join us tonight.
Yeah.
As if you should talk, Rene.
Oh, yeah, darn. Hello, Pot. This is the kettle. You're black.
Exactly.
You guys are both busy. Busy kids.
You too, Seth. I don't see that much Jolt Cola going into your veins.
No, you're right. I don't do much of the caffeine.
So we have a little bit of meta to get us started. We did Mobile Nations 10, the F word. Michael DeGusta was kind enough to join Phil Nickinson and myself to discuss not the F word you're thinking, but the even more notorious one, the fragmentation, the fork, the... what do they call it in Google Land? The legacy. Seth, I know you saw the show. I think it turned out really well.
Yeah, it was an excellent, lively, spirited discussion. Those guys went at it from Jump Street, and it was great. Everybody was being very frank and very honest about where they thought the state of things currently sits, and it was a fantastic discussion with a lot of great points made by everybody. I highly recommend a listen.
So you can check that out at mobilenations.com/shows. It is also on tippy.com and Android Central. Georgia,
8 men entered a ring, only one left. Find out who.
There
watch
can
the show.
be only one. Georgia, speaking of shows and you doing a lot of them, you did Zen and Tech number 23, Work Stress.
It's a show that I'm going to have to actually go back and deal with because I've been allowing my work stress to be a little bit overmounted. So, you can take a check at it, and so will I.
Wait a minute. Are we not taking our own advice? Is that possible?
It might be possible that I have a natural propensity to take on more projects than time will allow me to complete. So I need to balance that out a little bit more, manage time.
Well, I thought it was an excellent episode because you brought a lot of the you did a lot of individual shows on different subjects like communication and boundaries and goal setting. And this one you brought them all together but focused on your work life, on how to improve it, on how to not be continuously under pressure, not be a slave to your smartphone. And I think it worked really well because you built that good foundation.
It's one of the shows we started with foundational things that will help for overall stress, things that you need to deal with. And now some of the shows that we'll be going through will be how we put all of those together and actually managing specific events in our life. So if you have any that you would like us to cover, any issues, problems that you're dealing with, we'll take a check at it.
Yep. zenandtech.tv, let us know. We also had Jason, the awesome man who's been doing all the iOS doodles for us, did his latest masterpiece. This iDoodle is as if millions of Punch the Monkey ads suddenly cried out in terror and then were suddenly silenced. And it has the Force ghost of Steve Jobs watching mobile flash burn.
So, Seth, when you looked at this iDoodle, did you scream out yes?
No, I didn't. I do love how so many of them have Star Wars themes, though. I just love that. I get such a kick out of it.
And he's got his Obi-Wan Kenobi pants on, which I think is great.
Perfect.
And My only concern, Seth, and you raised this before the show, is that some bastard emperor might come along and try to stick his Flash in some black armor and keep it alive.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. And your comment was what?
That's called Adobe Air.
Right.
Everything is going according to my design. Well, Georgia, have you got any news for us?
Yes, we have some more things out of the rumor mill. iOS 5.02 around the corner, and it will be perhaps readdressing battery issues and coming out soon with Siri enhancements, which I am so stoked with because I'm just waiting for Siri to be able to launch applications.
On the iPhone 4S that you don't have yet?
That I do not have as of yet.
Okay.
Though I might have been bothered perhaps in the future about that.
What's interesting though is that these rumors come from a site that's not well known for rumors, but I think they're so obvious. I mean, Seth, of course Apple is working on the next point releases of iOS, right? I mean, there's no chance in the universe that they're not.
No, they're done. They told me they're done.
Here's another question that comes to mind. Actually, before I get to that, Georgia, I don't know if you remember, but you had some rather strong words to say about 3G going missing in iOS 5. And we got a bunch of feedback. People actually sent in a lot of things. Some saying they did still have 3G settings, some saying they didn't. And it turns out it might be the carrier file that is setting that certain carriers are turning off the ability to turn off 3G while other carriers in other markets are leaving it on. So it might not be Apple or anything there. It might just be that they gave that control away.
I don't ever see Apple giving up control, though. Doesn't that seem a little bit outside of their mark?
No, they have what's called a carrier file for early iPhone, and sometimes you get carrier updates, and it lets the carrier control specific things for their network. For example, the amount of pictures you can attach to MMS, whether you can do group SMS or not, whether tethering is free or you need a tethering account. So it's things that they determine they want to control for their networks. Like maybe some network doesn't even have a 2G. They only want to switch to a 3G network, so they would disable that because there's no edge to fall down on. And it looks like a bunch of them decided to turn that off for this update.
That's very interesting. I guess, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to take a look into that. Do you believe that that's the reason why it's no longer there? Did Apple say anything about it, or is it just conjecture at this point?
Apple doesn't care. It's just a few people on the forums getting very upset about it.
If there's a few people on the forums, though, there's probably a lot of people that are not inside of the forums that are caring about it.
Apple's saying that your battery life is so small that you don't even have time to switch the settings before your battery dies, so they're going to fix that first.
Fair enough.
I was kidding. Anyway.
Now, for Siri, how difficult would it be for Siri to be able to launch each application that is a native application if it would be, say, the enhancement of saying, Siri launch photo, and then, take a picture?
Android.
Do you think that it would be something that would be so difficult that it would be, do you think it would be able to come out in the next update, or do you think this is something that would take a lot more time to implement?
I don't understand why Siri does what she can do and what she can't do right now, because there's certain things that you can ask Siri to do, and other things she'll say, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. She can delete some things, not others. She can move some things, not others. She can access some things, not others. And it might have just been a time factor, because apparently one of the reasons why iOS 5 took so long is that they kept working on Siri, and maybe they just didn't have time to do more. But Android, I think since, I forget which version, the one that shipped on the... Do you remember which version of Android shipped on the Nexus 1, Seth? Was it 2 point...
I thought it was 2 point...
It was before
might have been
Froyo.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2.1, but I could be...
Froyo? Anyway, with that, you could basically voice control almost everything on the Nexus 1. You could tell it to do all sorts of things, and I think it's an absolute no-brainer next step that Apple will do this. I'm just curious, what do you think they'll do first, Georgia? Do you think they'll do the turn on, turn off Bluetooth, turn on, turn off Wi-Fi, or do you think they'll try and do something a little fancier?
I think that they're going to go for things that are very simple to implement, deal with native applications. I don't think that photographs are going to be as easy to launch on their own. And again, I don't know. We'd have to find out what people that work with either voice software and then programming would feel would be easier for them. But I think that to turn off and on settings seems simple enough. But does Siri launch anything on its own? No.
Phone. It launches a phone app if you have to make a phone call. I believe everything else is handled in a widget, but like, for example, an email or an SMS or something, you can tap on the widget and that'll launch the app.
Right, but it doesn't launch it on its own.
No, just the phone, I believe, is the only thing that launches on its own.
So I'm thinking that possibly the reason why it can't do those other things is because of all the different ways you can ask it to do the things that you can. Like you can say, text my wife such and such, or tell my wife, or send my wife a message. And there's so many different ways you can interact with a single, command that you want to issue that there's probably a lot of variation that Apple couldn't nail down to actually deal with opening apps, opening settings, things like that. And if we see it, I'm sure it's going to happen just with settings or just with the apps that ship with the phone, because there's so many different apps. And a lot of times the name of the app that you see in iTunes, like on your computer, is different than what actually shows up on the device. So you'd have to know what to ask for. And do you say open it? Do you say launch it? Do you say enable Bluetooth, toggle Bluetooth? Like there's so many different ways to do the things you can do. It's probably hard to nail that down. So
City,
I think it's going to...
Bluetooth on, engage.
Yeah, it's probably going to be
I would assume that it'll be just with the native applications. I think that it would be a nightmare to be able to launch certain applications by name. I don't think that it would work exceptionally effectively, and it would make people really, really frustrated if they launch the improper application. And then Siri wouldn't be able to do anything with it anyways because it's a non-native application.
Yeah. I'd love to just be able to say Bluetooth on, Bluetooth off, just that simple. I'm happy. I'm done.
Brightness down 20%.
Sorry, Seth, I can't do that. Sorry, Georgia, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Siri, thermonuclear war.
Sorry, Rene, the only winning move is not to play.
Yeah. Oh, I have such dreams for Siri. What is your ideal? I mean, if they could put one feature in Siri for an upgrade in 5.1, Seth, what would it be for you? Would it be those easy toggles?
Yeah, probably. Because, it does a lot of the stuff I do on a daily basis, and I think the only thing that I would really like is to not have to drill through settings to do things. Like, if I want to turn something like call forwarding on, it's like 4 or 5 taps to get there. So if I could just say call forwarding on, and what it does is it saves the last number you forwarded to, that would be great, because then I could forward to my Skype or whatever I want to do, and no taps instead of 4 or 5. Same thing with Bluetooth. Same thing with a lot of the other settings that I toggle on a daily or weekly basis. So that I'd be happy with that.
See, I'm not so much of a toggler. I almost never turn Bluetooth off, or I only turn Wi-Fi off if I'm near one of those mobile hotspots and it's interfering with my 3G. But you can make the Captain Default jokes you want, but I'm not a settings toggler. So what I'm looking the most forward to is, how you can say you can do things with text messages you can't do with emails. It's just there's a disparity of services still, and I would rather just be able to say, Siri, reply to this email. Like an SMS comes in, I can reply to that SMS, but an email comes on, I still have to manually tip through, and then I can dictate the email, but I can't have Siri just reply to an email the way that she can reply, or he in the UK and France can reply to a message. I would just like the services rounded out first, so that I don't have to try to remember which things I can and can't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Fix and make sure that all programs are accessed uniformly, the ones that Siri already works for. And then add some, like, I would love the launching of applications, just because if I am in the car and I could send out a email without having to take out my phone, that would save me a lot of time, just because I don't have a lot of time in the day in order to do that.
You can launch apps. It's just you have to do it through actions. Like, you can say, send an email, and it'll start writing an email. Or Siri, search Google for this, and it'll launch the web browser. I don't know if you have to tap through it for the web results.
Will it send it on its own, or do I have to? I don't want to have to. If I'm driving, if I'm in the car, I don't want to tap.
Well, it'll send an email and stuff on its own. It just won't do other apps. Like, I can't say launch Twitter or send a tweet yet. I can say send a text message, send an email, but I can't say send a tweet, even though Twitter is integrated into iOS 5. And
I thought that you had to tap it in order for the email to actually be sent.
No, you can say send it.
Perfect. So that's not bad then.
But here's the thing that annoys me is that I feel like it's not fast enough. I'll say send an email to Georgia. Hey Georgia, how are you doing? Beep. Send it, and I say send it, but it's like, do you want to send it? And I type send it, and it's like it's still waiting, and I miss the timing every time. I miss the timing because it seems slow to me.
Yeah, it does.
Right. There's a delay in which the time of which Siri actually turns on to be listening.
Can you believe we're already calling this phone slow?
Well, it's not slow. It's like I'm sure that because I speak a little bit quickly at times, and like Siri has to listen to you stop talking. It'll ring the bell. Then it'll say something else and then switch to... It's almost like a walkie-talkie where you can't talk at the same time. You have to take turns. And I'm not used to that.
So you were wishing that Siri could multitask?
Yeah, or at least let me start... I realize that's a huge challenge, but just let me talk whenever I want. Goramit.
You would... And I might be completely messed up with this, but, with 2 A5 chips... maybe one listening and one doing would be something that would be interesting if it could switch in between.
It might be hearing itself then. It may end up in a loop.
Well, no, because it doesn't actually hear itself.
If it's coming out the speaker and then coming in the microphone? Did I just blow your mind? Mind blown.
Yeah,
that was pretty good. That was pretty good. So I guess it would have to just, not be able to reply to its own voice, because that would be totally messed up.
Yeah, just anything that's on the wavelengths of a Siri voice cut out. George, are you tempted to actually get a 4S now? If like Siri gets a major enhancement, are you... Because I know that Twitter...
If Siri can launch... Yeah, Twitter, thank you. If Siri can launch applications... But again, then my question is this. If I want Siri, which I do. I love Siri. I love Siri. For someone that does not have Siri, this is some sort of unrequited love affair with Siri.
Yes.
But now I will want to get the iPhone 5, which will be coming now in less than a bloody year, hopefully.
Whatever
hopefully
they
not
choose
15
to call
months. That could kill. Yes, whatever they choose to call it. I'll call it iPhone 5 for now. Do I pay the $600 and don't have to get stuck with a carrier for 3 years? Canada, it's the 3 years, not 2 years. Or do, I end up spending a lot of money for it? Either way, I'm torn.
Seth and I bought them, so you know our answer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both of you did not buy... Rene, you didn't buy an unlocked phone,
yes,
though.
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, it was almost $1,000 with all the taxes and the Apple Care and everything.
Dude.
I use it like all day, every day, man. I spend more than that on peanut butter during a year, I think, if you add it up.
Probably not. I doubt you spend a K of peanut butter. What about you, Seth?
I bought it on contract because I don't really care. I'm eternally shackled to AT&T at this point. So we bought
25 years later.
Yeah.
How much is the contract for breaking right now with AT&T? If you choose to break contract, like if it's only $300, I'll still probably end up saving $400.
Yeah, I think it's probably around that. I don't know because I haven't checked in a while.
Yeah, because if the early termination fee is about, B King says that it's $375. Bilkin says it
goes down. The longer you've had your phone, it goes down.
Right. So since I just looped my contract, I guess it's probably the highest it's going to be.
But here's the thing, Georgia. Let's say you get yourself a tasty, coffee shop beverage every day. That's like $3-4 a day. $3-4 times 365 days a year. That's more than an iPhone. It's just because it's incremental, you never think about it.
Yeah.
It's the feeling of being beholden to a carrier that actually upsets me.
I'm talking about unlocked. Unlocked, man. Unlocked.
Oh, to get one that's unlocked.
It's if you amortize it over the entire year, it's cheap.
I'm wondering now, though, if I just get it on contract, because odds are I will be staying with the same carrier, and then I just break the contract if I so want. I might be spending less than $1,000, of which...
How long have you been on that carrier?
5 years.
See? So you would have gone through almost 2 contracts by now.
Exactly.
And you would have gotten 2 cheap phones.
Exactly. So I'm thinking that might be a better plan. If I'll see how much I can get the phone for. Even if it is $300, and I don't know what the termination fee in Canada is for it.
That's only if you ever terminate. I mean, you may not terminate.
I might not.
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm really pulled to it. I hate you both.
All right, chat room, you know what to do. Get to work.
Get to the Twitter, to the internet.
You wonder why I don't go on Twitter every day.
The other big news this week is that Apple launched, and this really kind of ticked me off. We got all these headlines. Apple launched iTunes Match. The actual headline is Apple launched iTunes Match in the U.S. If you are in the U.S. and you decide to pay $25, you can have iTunes Match. Seth, do you have iTunes Match?
No.
Georgia, you're not in the U.S. Forget you.
So no.
My U.S. account has iTunes Match. I did try it out. Ali Kazmuha, our awesome ninja of all things iPhones, did actually 2 really, really good how-tos. One on how to subscribe to iTunes Match and get it playing over your Apple TV, and another how to set it up on your iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch, both with video. So if iTunes Match is something you're into, go and check that out. But this music locker thing, Georgia, it still kind of perplexes me. So, and Apple sounds almost like a too good a deal to be true. So let's say all your music comes from legitimately ripped CDs. Wink, wink. Okay, you can now pay $25, and Apple will scan your drive, and every song it can match, it will give you a legitimate, just like your ripped CD legitimate, 256-bit AAC encoded, good quality copy of the song straight from the iTunes library, as if you'd boughtened it directly there. That's the past conjugation of bought in Canadian, Seth. Boughtened. And that's it. And if you don't renew your subscription, you still get to keep that music as long as you've downloaded it, because as far as I can tell, it's a regular iTunes AAC file. It's not protected. It's not DRM locked. It's just in your library.
So what you're saying is that for those, and I'm sure that no one that listens to the show would do this, but if anyone did get a song illegally, then match the song, then afterwards they would have it legally.
I don't want to say anything when the RIAA might be listening and decide to be the usual jerkheads that we all know and despise.
Because they don't know about this already.
I'm thinking that they've finally realized that they are getting nothing for all that unboughtened music up until this point, and Apple is offering them $25. You know, it's half a fitty.
Which is more than they would have got. People that would choose to download something, you know, and with iTunes, it's so very cheap. Like, you know, for 99 cents, people deal with it. But, you know, what does this really say about downloading illegal music?
I will not comment either for or against the practice of which I know nothing. Actually, in Canada, it's different. In Canada, we pay a tax on every bit of media, which is supposed to recompense the labels for any music that winds up on a burned CD or a jump drive or something. So it's a little bit different depending on your jurisdiction. But the other thing that's fascinating is that, again, it's still this Schrodinger's music. It's neither streamed nor downloaded. You press the little iCloud icon, and it'll start to play, but it will also download to your device. Then if you delete it from your device, it's still in iTunes. If you delete it on your computer, it gives you an option to delete it on iCloud as well. And then if you delete it on iCloud, it will delete it from your iPhone or iPad, but it will not delete it from your machine, so you could theoretically re-upload it. And it's got a little bit of the Apple simplicity, but it also sounds like they had to jump through a lot of hoops, and it's more complex than maybe I'd like, Seth.
Yeah, no, it's exactly what I was just thinking. As you were saying that, I was getting lost, and my comment was going to be, I don't understand what you just said, and I think you're exactly right. This is probably as simple as it could be right now for this kind of stuff, because they had to make all kinds of concessions and deals, and it can't be in this place and that place. It's got to be here, but you can access it. And I mean,
neither alive nor dead.
Right. It's gotten to the point where it's laughable, but this is not how people consume media. And the sooner that these crazy organizations understand that, the sooner we can get past it and people can legally purchase more stuff and enjoy it. You know, it can't be this hard. It can't be.
Why won't you take our money? We want to pay you for this stuff.
The old way to the new way. It's always rough.
Yeah, don't even get me started. I could go forever on this.
Yeah, I launched I'm just going to add in a big complaint. I launched the Netflix app on iPhone, and I hadn't used it on the iPhone for a while, so I had to reinstall it. and I typed in my login, and immediately it booted me out of the app and sent me to Facebook so I could hook up the Facebook application. And then I said, no, hell no, and I force quit it. I went back to Netflix, started playing the show that I was watching on my Apple TV before, and on the screen there's a do not share with Facebook button taking up a good portion of the screen. I don't want an opt out of Facebook button. I want that button off my screen and now. I thought that Quickster was about as stupid as Netflix could be, but it turns out they have whole new levels of stupid with which to taunt me.
That actually happened to me a long time ago when they had first rolled out some changes to that app. I saw exactly what you were seeing, and I was like, what the heck is this? And then I never saw it again. And a couple other people posted it on Twitter, and apparently that was just something that they were doing, like trying, but that was not really supposed to make it into the release. But since that is running web code, I guess it trickled out to the app and some people saw it.
Why? It's the same thing Georgia says about the App Store. Why? I'm about to use your app, consume content that I'm paying you for, and your first thing you do is kick me out of it.
Yeah, that's
right.
not
It's frustrating. Yeah, it's not user-friendly at all.
They're not fighting for the user, Seth.
Certainly not.
And they're not thinking about how to sell product and make the user experience be smooth.
Smooth?
Smooth.
Yeah.
500 onion rings. If you would like to learn how to subscribe to and set up iTunes Match, we have a how-to for that. And we have it for the iPhone, the iPad, and the iPod Touch. So setting up, subscribing, doing it all.
Yeah. Beginning to end, Ali rocked it.
Yeah, and I will send a link.
Can we talk about the 4-inch iPhone now? Come and talk about the 4-inch iPhone.
Please.
So this is another one of those crazy rumors from component makers who are friends of a cousin whose llama knows somebody who once worked in a factory next door to the chemical plant that treated the glass in the production facility. And they are rumor mongering that Apple has a 4-inch display made by LG Display, which would be half an inch bigger than the current display. They got that by subtracting 4 inches, the rumor display size, from 3.5 inches, the current display size. I'm fairly certain that was a process used to determine this result.
I don't think that math works out, but okay.
But and then immediately we got all these articles about how there was also a rumor saying that Apple was going to make an iPhone 5 this year and it was going to have a 4-inch display, but Steve Jobs himself ixnayed it because it would fragment development. And because Steve Jobs is a damn smart person, that story rang false to me immediately because screen size never fragments anything. I mean, unless we're talking extremes, like a 1-inch iPhone or a 10-inch iPhone would fragment things, like an iPad. But within a half inch, the screen size doesn't matter. It's the resolution that matters. Apple can have a 960 by 640 3.5-inch screen or a 960 by 640 4-inch screen is almost exactly the same for developers. If they had a 3.5-inch screen and changed the resolution arbitrarily, it would be like Seth, like our good friend Mark Edwards did with his diagram of the grid in Microsoft's approach, where pixels no longer fall anywhere. So I'm taking these rumors with a 4-inch screen size grain of salt.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do? We keep hearing this over and over and over again, and I guess now because they've made such a fuss about Retina and what that means and set people's expectations for that, that's really the sticking point for nerds, right? Is that, well, if they do this, it can't possibly be Retina anymore because it's not the same pixel density. It's a little less, but it'll still be nice, and I think that's where people get hung up, right? I
think the math. If you have a 3.5-inch screen, because Retina is not just the number of pixels, it's the distance from your eyes. And if you have, I see Georgia nodding because she did the math faster than me. If you hold it a bigger screen, you hold slightly further away, so the math recalibrates, and it's still basically a Retina display. It's only when the resolution drops at a large size.
Yeah, right. I think that Apple though would have a hard sell in saying it's still Retina, even though the resolution would end up being at the same distance. Less than. But with Siri and other ways in which we're going to be able to interact with the iPhone, are people going to really matter? Is bigger going to make that much of a difference in comparison to being able to have a phone that is your best friend, can take care of you, can help recalibrate map locations,
Little Pixar buddy.
open things up, take care of where your friends are and deal with other things. I think that in the end, with Siri, they've gone a direction that will make the difference between, half an inch here or there, not really as important as what it once was, and leaves everyone else in the dust.
You're saying your phone becomes as big as your voice.
Well, once your phone is your friend, you don't care if it's, a little off color or a little bit this and that, because it's something that you feel comfortable with and that you're used to and you become dependent upon.
Seth, correct me if I'm wrong here, because we did that show yesterday on Android fragmentation. And the thing is, because Apple has such a tightly controlled, they have one phone a year, they can push out timely updates, they can do all these things because there's only one, really relatively only one iPhone. With Android, you have, I remember Sasha Sagan joking that you have Samsung makes a screen size at every 0.5 inch increment. They have the 3.5, the 4, the 4.5, the 5, the 3.5. Yeah. That's basically how you differentiate with Android, because iPhone is such an integral thing in and of itself. If you want to make a phone that's different, you make different screen sizes. I don't know that Apple necessarily feels there's a huge market for people who'd want an iPhone who simply aren't buying an iPhone because it's not 4 inches.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think Apple really cares about differentiating the hardware in that way, because they've dominated on software differentiation already between, the operating system itself and the App Store. So I can't see them doing anything incrementally and having two phones on the market that are just a little bit apart. If anything, I could see them having one, like the new phone is bigger and that's it, that's the new phone. I can't see them doing, like a 4 and then a 5 or a 4.5, I feel like it would water down their brand, and that's really, they haven't done things like that since the mid-90s. When Steve came back to the company, he got rid of most of the product line and said, here it is, pro, consumer, done. And I think the beauty of iOS is that aside from older devices, there is a phone and a tablet. And I think people really like that because it takes a lot of the thinking out of the choice for them. They just go, yeah, that's what I want. That's the thing. And I want to do stuff with it. They don't go, well, I guess I could use an extra half inch on my screen, but how does that really change my life? They don't have to ask those questions. Nerds like to ask those questions, and that's totally cool, but I don't think Apple cares.
Georgia, do you think that this is a secret strategy where Apple divided the market? Like, if there were a lot of iPhones and a lot of Androids and other stuff, it'd be like, do I get this or that or this or that? You might have 10 choices. But because there's only one iPhone, the initial choice is, do I get an iPhone or everything else? And they steal that 50% of choice right out the gate.
We've spoken a lot about this before, that it makes sense for the marketing. It makes sense for them having to be able to buy in bulk en masse, and it puts one phone out there, tries to make that phone the best so they don't have to spread all of their resources thin in developing for many different phones and seeing which people would like one thing. They do it one way and they do it as best as they can. The difference, though, is the iPods have been all over the place. They've done a lot of changes with the iPods. They've made small ones, they've made big ones, they've had different manners in dealing with them. And it seems like the iPods, though, market is a little bit all over the map in comparison to the iPads and the iPhones. And why is that, Rene? Because they even had the little tiny iPod that was like the size of a tie pin.
Yeah,
they have ones that have screens, they have ones that don't. They had ones with the circle dial, they got rid of the circle dial, they cut it in half. You had the one with the circle dial, the one without them. So why would they have such a different marketing strategy for the iPods in comparison to what they have for the phone or for the pad?
The answer to that is just because, actually there's two answers to that. One is that there's no developer ecosystem, so they don't have to worry. They're the ones making the software. So if they change anything, it's just on them to change their software. There's not 500,000 developer applications that have to be updated because of a significant change. And the other is because the iPod was a huge majority market. So you had 70%, or you still have 70% penetration of the market. And so many people had iPods that it became a fashion item, and you had to change merely to get people to want to buy the new one next year. And that gave Apple the freedom to experiment, to go forward, walk it back, go forward, walk it back, because you knew that was the market. And now this year we got no new iPods. Even the iPod Touch, you got white. The Nanos are the same. The Classics are the same. Shuffles are the same. And I think because that market is now, while it's still a majority of the MP3 player market, the MP3 player market is so small, even Apple doesn't care about throwing fashion at it anymore.
And there's not much of a competition.
No, and not much of a profit anymore in it either.
Right, and the development costs are not the same because they don't need the same type of screen.
Yeah, it's probably trivial for them at this point.
In addition to the market kind of stagnating, for lack of a better term, I think above all else, they're just going to take their resources and push where they can get the most bang for their buck, and that's iOS right now.
Do you think that with people using their phones more and more in order to listen to their music, besides the fact of exercising and them being exceptionally small, do you think that iPods are slowly going to die away and we will not be selling them? Or do you think there'll always be a place for iPods just because of how much smaller they can be? Yeah. And I'll get my bloody watch.
I think you're going to get your small exercise-oriented line or lines, and then you're going to have iOS devices. I don't see there being anything in between that in the future.
And will those small devices eventually run iOS?
Well, the Nano does now, so yeah, why not?
It runs a kind of a half hybrid between what's the old one called? Pico? I forget what the old OS is called, and iOS. Georgia, here's something that'll make you happy. The Siri security protocol was cracked. It is now theoretically possible to run it on every device. People stay calm, hold. There's still a lot of work to be done. For example, Apple's servers need to respond to requests, which means you still need to get an iPhone 4S ID, which is complicated. Or are they going to maybe try and put it on device, which will also be a little bit of a challenge. But theoretically, the guys from Applidium, how do you pronounce that? Applidium?
I think it's Applidium.
They've cracked the security that was around Siri.
It's funny when we spoke about people like them being able to crack and put Siri on iPhone 4s or any other iPhone devices. People with the iPhone S 4S actually became a little bit upset and said that's not fair. That's not the way that Apple wants the device to be used.
How dare you?
It's stealing a service that you have not, in theory, paid for. Which I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. It is, since we're actually going into the Apple servers, I can see how people would feel that way. Now, with the chance of an Android device being able to go onto Apple's servers, so you're not even buying an Apple product, Seth, do you think that Apple will find a way in which they will make sure that people will not be able to buy an Android device and crack it so that they can use Siri on it? Like, that might really upset.
Might be irksome.
Yeah, I would think that the OS has to communicate some signatures back to the server that...
Well, it would be faking a UDID of an iPhone 4S. So that's, you'd still...
Just
they'd
block
have
that
to...
UDID.
But they wouldn't know.
Well,
right?
I think if 8 million requests come from the same UDID, all of a sudden they'll...
Yeah,
well, everyone would be getting their friend's iPhone 4S and hacking it and using... Well, I would assume... would be using that. But do you think that... Yeah?
Well, the UDID is a unique device identifier. So I think once the device is activated, that thing is locked out as far as Apple's concerned, or it should be. And I think if you try to use the same one, it just shouldn't work. I mean, that can't be too complicated because that's one per device.
Well, they might. Okay, I don't think they could lock it out, but they might determine it's coming from two different sources and block both of them
at the same time, because they wouldn't know that the UDID would come in from this iPhone 4, and they wouldn't know if it was Phil's iPhone 4 or Fred's iPhone 4. But they might be able to know that it's been using illegally if they both send a pathway at the exact same time.
Coming from Florida and New York at the same time? Shenanigans! Block it!
Right. And then they might be able to deal with it that way. And they might be able to have it linked to, your name, maybe your account name and your UDID. But then still, if you get someone else's... I think that the only way that they could deal with it, and again, I'm not a programmer, so I'm not sure, would be if it was a dual signal that was happening at the same time. But that also that would suck up a lot of memory if every time it was verifying as well.
I think
then you better get ready for the panicky security quote unquote blog posts about how dangerous the UDID apps are in the App Store and how quickly they'll try to get them pulled because it's now a security hole.
I think a lot
That's a very interesting thing. Or there'll probably be programs that will give you many random ones, and people will just keep on trying until they find one that will work and open up Siri.
I think also it's important to remember that there's not everyone, like my mom won't be able to rush out and get an iPhone 4S UDID to spoof. She'll just be sitting there going, well, what are these kids doing now? But I think also on Twitter, a lot of them were talking about running it on device and not bothering to communicate with Apple's server. Just basically porting a subset of features or a defined set of features and making it local to the device, and that would be a way of working around it, which isn't, a terrible solution.
It might not be terrible, but the horrible part about this, and maybe tell me if I'm completely wrong with thinking this.
You're completely wrong with thinking this.
So say that someone spoofs my UDID, I have the proper iPhone 4S. How would Apple know the difference between mine being the one that should be used and someone else that's stealing it? Would we both lose access to Siri, and I would have to go back and verify that mine actually was the proper device?
They can't steal your UDID. You had to give it to them, so you are just as
guilty.
But
say that they used a random UDID finder that would just keep on tracking until there was one that would be hooked up with Siri.
But I think that's like guessing credit card numbers. I'm not sure that's a
No, exactly. But there would be someone out there that would eventually be caught with it. It might not be me. It might be someone else.
That's also assuming that it really is just a simple UDID lock. There might be other things in the protocol that's checking for the iPhone. I mean, I don't know. I think it's too theoretical at that point.
Well, without getting too deep, what was the initial purpose of assigning the UDID to the devices way back when? Like, what was that used for?
Theft. No, prevent theft.
No, I think. We only heard about them when they launched the App Store, and they gave developers the ability to provision UDIDs for education or for beta testing applications.
So it's really more linked to apps.
But I think Apple used UDIDs originally as a unique identifier for the phone, so that any service that they tied to it could be tied to a single device.
Mm-hmm.
I think remember when they first started hacking push notifications? When you jailbroke your phone, you couldn't push notify unless you had an Apple, and then they would start copying jailbreak IDs off of phones to use the push notification servers. It sort of gives me flashbacks to that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found really cool was Steve Jobs spent several years before the launch of the iPhone talking about replacing the carriers, getting rid of AT&T, chucking Verizon, throwing Sprint under the bus, and replacing them with a synthetically created pseudo carrier using open portions of the Wi-Fi spectrum. If only they'd been able to do this. This, to me, is one of the dreams that didn't get fulfilled, and one of the most hurtful ones that didn't get fulfilled.
Right. I'm not sure how exactly they would go about replacing the carriers, though.
It'd be an Apple carrier. You'd sign up to the Apple carrier, and they would try and get some spectrum for it, and you'd have a phone that was just completely Apple. You'd pay Apple for your plan.
Well, and there was all that talk of Apple doing an MVNO way before the phone even launched, and everybody said, well, I would do that. I would drop my plan and sign up with Apple because it's going to be better than anything we could get now, and that didn't come to pass. But think about how completely counter Apple tendencies carrier deals actually are. Like, trying to deal with them and trying to actually make everything consistent and work properly across the carriers, like that, they probably had to just sit around a table and just acquiesce and be like, there's no way we can do this without them. We can't do the thing we want to do yet, so we just have to suck it up.
It's interesting. And they ended up making that, during the iPhone announcement. What was it called before AT&T? Was it Singular?
Singular, yeah.
Yeah, the head of Singular came out to make the announcement with them. But yeah, you're right. There are all these rumors that Apple would even let you choose carriers. There was a patent they had for an app that you could go and see what carrier deal was the best that day and pick a different one. And then there was rumors recently that Apple wanted to get rid of SIM cards. And it seems like the carriers are kind of paranoid about Apple. Like, Apple makes them tons of money, but at the same time, Apple disintermediates them to such an extent that they're always kind of watching what Apple's going to do next.
Yeah, totally.
What else do we have, George? I lost track. I'm sorry.
Apple has added Bob Iger to the board of directors, and Art Levinson is now chairman. So change is happening. Good for Apple, Rene?
So Apple didn't have a chairman for a long time, and then after Steve Jobs retired as CEO, he became chairman. And after he passed away again, they didn't have a chairman. They appointed Tim Cook to the board, but they didn't have a chairman. So Art Levinson, former CEO of Genentech, used to be on the Google board, resigned because they didn't like him being on both boards, and he chose Apple. So I think he's a fairly solid choice. He's been on most of their committees. And Bob Iger still runs Disney, and Disney bought Pixar, and Pixar, Steve Jobs was one of the largest shareholders, so he's worked with Bob Iger a lot. Sorry, Georgia?
So yeah, it seems like the Disney Apple, conglomeration continues.
The alliance is strong with them. Well, that's what he said. I mean, if you listen to what Iger says, he says, Apple has achieved unprecedented success by consistently creating a high-quality, truly innovative product, and I'm extremely pleased to join the board of such a wonderful company. And Tim Cook said that, he and Iger got to know each other. A strategic vision for Disney is based on 3 fundamentals: generating the best creative content possible, fostering innovation, and utilizing the latest technology. And it almost reads like an Apple manifesto. And there's been all these stories about Steve Jobs being a Walt Disney-like character, with that kind of focus. So maybe it is a good fit. It's still the whitest board in America, by the way. Most white male board in America. Just throw that out there.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not alone.
And Andrea Young, the lone woman on the board, isn't doing very well at Avon right now. So we'll see. I can see George's eyes glazing over as I talked about Apple board of directors.
Yeah, but Avon makes makeup, right? Georgia likes makeup.
No, she doesn't.
I like makeup. I like makeup. It's always interesting to me when we see the board of directors that are made up with 2 large companies. Again, Disney with since Steve Jobs worked so well with Pixar and did so much for it. It's an interesting match. I wonder if it will increase anything. If Apple TV does come out, will Disney applications in a Disney station be already starting up in with it?
There is a Mickey Mouse watch face now, Georgia, on the Nano.
That's true. That's true. And Muppets.
Yeah. Animal.
And Muppets. Love Jim Henson.
And Eric Schmidt from Google used to be on the board, and he resigned from the board, and in vengeance, he released a Gmail app for the iPhone, which got pulled almost immediately because they forgot to re-sign the push notification certificate. And now, a significant time later, it came back today. I downloaded it. I've been using it. It's working fine. But Seth, we talked about this on Iterate. It is still, I don't consider it a Gmail app. It is basically, I forget the name, but there was an app for a long time on the App Store that would wrap itself around the Gmail web app so that you could use contacts and add attachments. And it doesn't seem to me that Google made a real app here, but they just put their own wrapper around the Google website, and it's okay. It's just not great. It's not what I expect from Google.
Yeah. Well, I think Google's in a strange position now because all of their focus seems to be on Google Plus and pushing services to Google Plus and getting people into Google Plus. And there's been all that stuff that happened with Reader, and people aren't really happy about that. And they're changing the way that search works. They removed the plus modifier from search. Yep. So and there's all kinds of little things that they're doing that people are not happy about. And I feel like this just probably didn't get the focus that it might have gotten, at a different time when they weren't really, really pushing for other things to happen. So it's no surprise that it's not terrific.
The thing that gets me, Georgia, is that Google, today they had a Google Music event to announce Google Music, I guess their iTunes competitor. But Apple, will have a WWDC and they'll announce 3 or 4 things, maybe 6 tent poles, but they're all for one product. They're very focused. Google will have events where they announce 100 things and then other events during the year. And it seems like there's so many things they're working on that they can't focus on any one of them. They end up canceling a lot of them very quickly. And it also doesn't seem to me that, as much as the Steve Jobs biography paints him as sort of obsessive and, just almost OCD about getting stuff done, it doesn't feel to me like anyone in the Google C-level executive suite cares about their products to that extent. Maybe search, but they like the money from advertising, but I don't see Sergey Brin or Larry Page throwing this Gmail app at someone's head saying, no, I'm not releasing a product with a Google name on it that works this badly. I demand you make a fantastic app if you're going to call it the Google app.
Well, there's something to be said for both manners of dealing with it. Google definitely does kind of throws something into all of the different pools and sees which one floats and which one sinks or dies. Apple will deal with one thing, make sure that they get it right before it's put out. So in that, we can trust that Apple will probably put out a majority of the time good quality product. With Google, you never really know, but every once in a while they come up with something that's so cool and innovative and new that I have to hand it to them. It's interesting, and I like the fact that they both deal with things exceptionally differently, in that Google will find all kinds of different, unusual manners of going about things because a lot of people are working on things. The only thing is that with that is you don't have the same amount of reliability that you'll have with an Apple product. And in the end, especially for my work, I need something that's reliable. And actually, I have a question for Seth, if he has a second. Well, I'm not sure. You might both know, and I'm sorry because I'm kind of throwing this out there. But speaking about work, I know someone that is using Dropbox in order to carry around client files into from a computer, from their their Mac to a PC. And I was wanting to know what you think would be the best manner in which to encrypt files or bring them most securely through Dropbox.
Between OSs like that?
More for between OSs.
Probably TrueCrypt.
I would agree.
And is it the easiest one to use because they are not exceptionally techy?
Well, it's not. I wouldn't call it easy to use. It's definitely not intuitive, but it works, I think, on every single platform. And I'm sure there's walkthroughs for it. There's not too many steps. It's just when you look at it, you're like, okay, what do I do with this? So I think if you can get over the look of it not being completely understandable from the get-go, that's probably your best bet to have it work everywhere you need it to work and keep it like double locked up in Dropbox.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So basically what you want to do is encrypt the file before you put it in Dropbox and then decrypt. So Dropbox, you basically have a folder. The brilliant thing about Dropbox is that it's just a folder on your computer, and whatever you put in that is mirrored on any other machine that's logged into the same Dropbox account. So you stick a file in there, and it's going to be on the other computer. So the key is, how would you keep that file safe on one computer? And that will automatically keep it safe on all of them. Right. If you're worried about, because someone can go on your Mac and take it. It's not the transport. They're using Amazon S3 for the transport of the files. It's whether that file is inherently secure at all. And if it is secure, then it will be secure on the other machines.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to access it from mobile devices, but if they're only going between, desktops or laptops, that's probably...
No, you see, unfortunately they do, though. They would be, using their iPhone, then sending it to, say, the Mac, and then... so they would need something that would work on that as well.
Yeah, see, convenience is the enemy of security. The more convenient it is, the less secure it is.
Right. Well, right now, they don't have anything, so...
You may be able... I'd have to check and play with it. You may be able to encrypt a very small file and then mail that file from Dropbox, like in iOS. Just like attach that file to an email message, but I'm not sure how it would come through the process.
Right. Okay.
Not a great answer, but there is no real great answer for that yet.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I said I would ask. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's Jessica is saying that they encrypt you automatically. That's true, but Dropbox has access to it. So if your concern is that people at Dropbox can see the file, or if
no, it probably wouldn't. Well, yeah, it would be that as well.
And because it's not encrypted on the local machine, anyone who can get physical access to that machine, they can open it up like a regular file. So I mean, again, it's how secure is it on that local machine? It's a brave new world, and unfortunately, people haven't caught up with it.
Exactly.
Other apps. We are speaking of SugarSync. Someone was speaking of SugarSync in the chat room. We are doing a giveaway, a 30 gigabyte subscription to SugarSync for iPhone. Leanna took a look at the app. If you head on over to tippy.com/contests, you will see what she thinks of the app, and also you can leave a comment for your chance to win that 30 gigabytes of subscription. We're also doing a giveaway for Modern Combat 3 Fallen Nation, which I had my little brother play with over the weekend, and he thought it was, and he is a Call of Duty aficionado. He likes these shoot 'em up games, these first-person shooters, and he thought it was fantastic. We did it on the AirPlay mirroring too, and the controls weren't great, but wow, does this game look good. That's all I'm going to say. And you can leave a comment there to win Modern Combat as well. Tippy.com/contests.
And we have also our tips. So we have our daily tip, how to set up a free iCloud account with iOS 5.
I was going to ask you guys that because I had a MobileMe account, so I transitioned it to iCloud. So I have an iCloud account. I didn't sign up a new one. Seth, you and your wife both have iCloud accounts now, right?
Yeah, we do, and I actually wasn't sure if I wanted to do the transition, so I just created a new one for her. She had not had one, and I created a new one for myself and just figured, let me start fresh. I'm not going to mess around with the MobileMe transition, so my MobileMe account is just languishing currently.
I have my MobileMe account on my old Snow Leopard machine, actually the one that we're doing this broadcast with, and iCloud on my laptop, which is running Lion, and they don't talk very nicely to each other anymore.
Yeah, I turned it off on my last remaining Snow Leopard machine for that reason.
George, are you tempted by a free iCloud account, or are you sticking with your current setup?
I'm good right now, but now all my thoughts are on if I'm going to get the 4S or not.
You know you're getting it. The minute you always tell that me, I always go, George, I'm thinking about getting it. She's like, oh, that means you're already buying it.
I'm not as
pliable.
Yeah, I'm not as quick to sign up as most other people are, as some people now have noticed about me for not even upgrading to iOS 5.
We actually talked about you on Mobile Nations because they were talking about fragmentation and how a lot of Android devices don't get the current OS, and we mentioned that even some people running iOS who have access to the current OS are still running 8 or 9 versions behind.
Yeah, that's might be me.
I also want to mention the Tippy forums because they are exploding. Our forums are growing at a phenomenal rate. Jeremy picked out a few threads this week on Flash, on the iPhone 4S jailbreak, on home screens, and on iTunes Match. We have an iTunes Match troubleshooting thread up there. We've also created some new threads. If you go to the forums now, we have a whole iPhone in action section, and I really love this section because it's fun to talk rumors. It's fun to talk about the next iPhone. It's fun to joke with Georgia about her being a complete failure to get the latest iPhone. But
Thanks.
After you've got the iPhone, you got to do something with it. You're not just going to buy it and put it on a shelf. So we have a business and enterprise forum, so you can discuss using the iPhone in your workplace. We have a photography and videography forum, so you can talk about taking better pictures and video, and just about photography and videography in general. We have a music, DJ, and jamming forum where you can go talk about making music with your iPhone. We have some great giveaways going on in there. A TV, movies, and video forum where you can talk about watching TV shows and movies and all sorts of stuff on your iPhone. Books, magazines, and comics forum. We have a Tippy book club. Every month we're choosing a new book. This month it was the Steve Jobs book, and we're discussing them so we don't put spoilers on the main page. If you have any ideas for what our next book should be, let us know. We're also discussing DC's 52 in comic books and what the hell Marvel is doing right now because nobody seems to know. And we have a brand new cooking and foodies forum, and I'm tossing some of my recipes on there because I kept twittering up the stuff I was cooking. People were like, screw you, Rene, give me the recipe for that or stop twittering it. So I started posting my recipes. So check all those out. Whew.
Forums are on fire.
They are. They're insane. And we're getting, thanks to Corey from Android Central and Adam from Crackberry, who've been working really hard on bringing the Tippy forums up to the same technological level as the other sites. We've got amazing new features. You've got to check them out.
Love it.
That's all. Love up.
Well, I think I might be, I might have decided to upgrade.
Nice.
Oh, boy.
My phone. Not the iOS, but that'll happen with both.
Yeah,
exactly. So
we did it, everybody.
Yeah.
We did it.
Not yet. I'm just
No, I landed on the aircraft carrier and I declared that we've won the war. I'm in my green jumpsuit. Mission accomplished. Woo! Georgia, where can we find out more about you and your promised upgrade?
You can find me on Twitter at GeorgiaTIPB, and you can find me on the website, www.tippy.com, and of course on Zen and Tech and Girls Gone Gadgets.
Nice.
And iPad Live.
Woohoo. Seth Clifford, sir, where can we find out more about you?
I am at Seth Clifford on Twitter. You can find me on iPad Live and on Iterate with Rene and Mark Edwards of Bajango. And if you'd like to check out our website and see some of the apps and sites that we build, the address is nfidm.com. We're Nickelfish, damn it.
You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find me on tippy.com. You can find me also on zenandtech.tv. You can find all of us at Tippy. You can email us at podcast@tippy.com. Tell Georgia what color phone, what size phone, what carrier, all the other details. You tell her what to get, and I'm sure she will be more than not happy to oblige you. Give us your feedback. If you haven't already, please go to iTunes. Please subscribe to iPhone Live. Leave a rating. We've also got iPhone Live video now. You can subscribe in RSS or on iTunes, in addition to YouTube, mobilenations.com. Sorry, youtube.com/mobilenations. Whichever way you feel best, just please subscribe. For all of our shows, including the Crackberry Podcast, Android Central, Girls Gone Gadgets, Iterate, WP Central, and all the rest, please visit mobilenations.com/shows. We are here each and every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Our companion show, iPad Live, Georgia?
Same bad time, same bad channel, Sunday nights, 9 o'clock.
And on behalf of everyone here, I want to thank our outrageously awesome chat room, 300 and something strong right now. You guys just rock. The best community in mobile.
That you guys are. Thank you so much
Indeed.
for showing up and taunting us all through the time that we're chatting. We love it.
Good night, everybody.
See you
Bye.
guys.
End of line.
Beep, beep.